Good morning. We are here. Give us a moment. It is February 7th, 2012. Full moon, Leo. And we are pleased to be here to share some thoughts with you. There's a lot of turmoil that engulfs the planet. It is a time when there seems to be many who are agitated, many who are nervous, many who are jittery, some who are angry. It is a time when these deep concerns are really beginning to surface. When you reach points in time that seem to be part of a process, there becomes this concern that the process is moving along. Many of you are cooks. You cook things. And there are times in the cooking when you cannot be distracted by the telephone or something else. It would be a bad time to have someone knock at the door, or to have the dog knock over something in another room, or whatever. Maybe the child all of a sudden gets very quiet and you have to go investigate. Because you are in the midst of a process that is timed. You must be ready to put the ingredients in and stir them and watch them and be ready for the next phase of the process. And that kind of anticipation and nervousness that you might feel at, do I do it too long? Do I do it too short? Do I leave it on the burner a little longer? Do I take it off? Is it going to be in time with the other ingredients? It can be very, very unnerving. There's an old saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. And when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, all trying to do whatever they are doing. And in a way, that metaphor is what seems to be happening here on the planet Earth at this time. You have all of these individuals, and we're not just talking about the leaders, we're talking about everyone. Everyone's attempting to cook a future. And they're all nervous. Is it going to go my way? Is it going to go that way? Is Obama going to become president, or is it going to be Romney? Or is there going to be a third person? Is that going to be good? Are we going to frack? Are we not going to frack? Are we going to drill for oil? Are we going to bring free energy devices forward? All of these different and seemingly opposing forces are coming into play at this time. Because there is an energy as you move. Particularly you have Neptune moving into Pisces, which is basically like dropping that Alka-Seltzer into the water. It's going to fizz it up. Understand? All of you have seen Alka-Seltzer. 1 minute you have this hard object that seems to be rigid and whatever. And you take it and you throw it into the water, and what happens? It starts to bubble, starts to soften, starts to dissolve. And that is really where you are in this part of the process. And so many of you who have rigid ideas, whether they are religious, political, economical, maybe they have something to do with relationships, male, female, role models, all of these kind of rigid things that all go back to a previous era in your history as being where they came from, if you will. Because they came from something, you know. They're not natural. They're not God-given. You created these. You had a time before they were, and then you had a time where they were. And you have lived a long time where that's what it was. We are talking millennia. We are talking many millennia. And now you have reached the point where it is time to really revisit. And there is this belief that there are forces against you. That there's something outside of you that's trying to harm you. Now, when you think of yourself as just an individual against the world, it's easy to have that kind of thinking. But when you see yourself as part of a larger experience, when you see yourself as a player in a grand play, then it is easier to see that your part, although important, is no more, no less important than everyone else playing their part. Whether it is the right or the left or the middle, whether it is the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews and others, whether it is races, black, white, yellow, brown, others. When you see yourself in these segregated groupings, then it becomes very easy to feel apprehensive about what is going on. But when you can step out of that and see yourself as a life force in a sea of life force, then it becomes easier to know that these segregations you have created are really false. You have creatures that live in the sea. There are many of them. What would happen if all of the water in the sea were to vanish? Would the whales do better than the crabs? Understand? There would be this loss that all would feel. And all of a sudden, all of the sea creatures would have the same concern. How do we bring back the water? Where did it go? How do we get it back? Well, in a way, that is what happened on Earth. You were once a very prosperous and energetic species, living on the planet in harmony with all others, whether it is the mineral kingdom, whether it is the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the realms of the fairies, the realms of the non-physicals. You lived in a wonderful sea of common experience, common connectiveness. And then all of a sudden this dry spell came in, the tide went out, if you will, and left you all on the beach to fend for yourselves. And some found little enclaves of water and became isolated. But they prospered in that little pool of water, while others were in the sun being bleached. Now the water is returning. And now those little pools are being reincorporated into the larger. And it is that concept that we want you to kind of think about for a time, those of you who are listening to our words. Because it's going to be real easy for the old school, if you will, to try to invoke the old ways, to invoke the old rigid segregations. But the tide has come in. And any of you who have been on a beach and seen a tide come in know that you cannot build a house of sand, a castle of sand, and expect it to withstand the beach coming in, the water coming in. What does it do? It dissolves your rigid constructs. And so we want you to see that first, this is not something alien, this is not something terrible, this is not something that needs to be fought at all costs, because it is quite natural. There's a saying, you can't fight the tide. The tides of change. Because what happens to you when you try to fight the tide? You get knocked around in the rocks. You get beaten on the shore. You get carried out into the sea and lost forever. Ask anyone who's ever lost anything at a beach, what's your chance of finding it again? But if you go to the beach not intending to hang on to these things, then you can enjoy the time, because it is very natural. That is what we want to say to you today. You are in a natural state of change. And the rigid, ideological, religious, dogmatic groupings, whether they are economical or whatever, these institutions are being threatened. They're being threatened by an outside force that says you cannot wall up life from experiencing its freedoms. Because there's a lot of rigidity in these groupings that would restrict your freedoms. The very rich have their rules, and this Warren Buffett man is breaking those rules, and the rich are very angry at him for it, some. There are others who are breaking these good old boy rule books. We want you to see the rule books that have been keeping you at each other's throats, if you will, dissolving in the wave of energy, so that they're not even there anymore. Not only are these rules no longer what's the word we are looking for? Enforceable. But there will come a time when you do not even remember them. You cannot find them. Where's that book? I put it down on the beach. Uh-oh. Tide came in. Took the book out to sea. And if you look in the distance, you see the pages all dissolving along the shore. Like tissue paper that they are made out of. Just as the Berlin Wall came down to break the isolation of the East from the West, this energy is coming to do that again in every area of existence. And we know that there are some rigid individuals, groupings, that would find these words blasphemous. But we are not here to speak untruths. We are here to help you understand the process. Because if you can understand the process, then you are usually able to work through it. Whether it is cooking, whether it is health and other things, whether it is your job. The more information that you can have about the process, the more calming energy can find you. It's interesting, there was a commercial made during the Super Bowl where Clint Eastwood, all of you are familiar with Mr. Eastwood, and he comes to say it's halftime in America. It is that time when you regroup to plan your strategies moving forward into the next. And we would say that this is a wonderful metaphor for where you are as a species. You've been through many things. You've been through some rough times. You've been knocked around. The game seems to have gotten very personal, very. But now you have this moment to relax, to collect your thoughts, and to step out into the next phase, refreshed and ready, with a new plan, a new air of confidence. Be confident. Be confident that you did not come here to be insignificant. Be confident that you had a choice to be here. Be confident that you have connections, whether it is with your neighbors, your family members, your countries, your planet, the nature around you, the animal kingdoms. You have all of these things going for you. The only concern that you really have is how to let go of some of the things that have been holding you back as a species. Because there are things holding you back. There have been those who have been keeping certain technologies and modalities from you that can help with your healing, help with your need for energy, help with your economies. But they have been kept from you. They have been kept from you by small groupings that thought they had to hang on to it. See those small groupings like the little pools we were talking about when the beach went out, the tide went out. Think about this for a moment. Let's work with that idea. You're on a beach. You've all seen, we would suggest more like a beach in California with the rocky cliffs and the sandy beaches. See the tide go out and see little pools that the water stays in. They're small microcosms that become very competitive for the little bit of water that is left behind. If all of a sudden all of the other creatures that were on the sandy beaches started converging on that place, would not the the creatures that were in there feel threatened. So this is natural. But now the water is returning. And that little pool is not all there is. And what you are really going to discover is that every time the tide went out, it really didn't go anywhere. It was right over there all the time. You just did not know how to get the water from there to here. But you're going to learn that. We would call that the free energy movement, which is coming. There are already many who have been working on this. But it's really going to come to fruition. Remember we said in one of our most recent postings, this is the year of proof. And one of the proofs that's coming is that you live in a sea of energy. So be careful of the rigidity that you bring with you from the past. Because it's going to dissolve. It's going to need to dissolve for you to see beyond the scarcity that has been gripping you for so long. With that, we will depart. It has been our pleasure.